Thank you. I try, to do my best to be communication is important, so do our best. All right. Just
Sorry.
bear with me as I get us online.
No, you're not.
Oh, you.
I know. Sleepy. Lexi, look, Mama. Yeah, good sounding.
Yeah.
We're going to be there very soon. I'm just writing the names now.
Oh. I can find that on my side.
All right, are we ready?
Yeah.
Can I get us started? All right.
Yeah. Okay.
I feel like we have always the best kind of spoiler alerts, when we come to have these conversations and we have just a gorgeous baby just sitting right there. But that's the kind of spoiler alert that you can warm my heart with any day of the week. So thank you so much, guys, for being here, for making the time, to have this conversation. I think that for me, I always say this and it's always so true. It's like, it's the highlight of my entire life when I get to have these conversations, and each time it does not get old, that is for sure. So tell me a little bit about how this happened. I know that it's been a long journey for you guys and unexpected and so many wonderful twists and turns. I'm sure that, you probably didn't expect looking back. And if I was to even have a question to ask, let's maybe start, kind of drop me into what was the moment that you kind of thought, maybe this dream of having a baby isn't going to happen. And tell us from there.
Sure. Well, we had kind of two of those moments because it sort of first happened when we first met, which I was 36 at the time. That was 2017, and we'd got together, and I hadn't met someone by this stage, and thought I better go and get my eggs frozen. So that was kind of booked in for a month after we'd met, and when I went along to the appointment, I got this shock.
And by we met,
super low AMH levels.
You mean you and Simon met?
Us. Yes,
Right.
yeah, sorry.
I was going to say, okay, not we.
We'd met later on in life, you could say.
No.
Yeah, no, not you guys. And yeah, so hearing about the super low AMH levels, I mean, the lady at this practice in London was like, you need to go and get pregnant right away. If you need to start trying now. I was like, oh, I've just met this guy. It's not, it's too early. So I guess from the very beginning of our relationship, it was sort of up in the air, is this going to work? Which for someone who'd always wanted children, in my case, that was, it was then became front and center. So quite early on in our relationship, we were thinking about the process. But then just to jump to, forward to your question.
Actually, before you actually answer that question, because I think, oh, sorry, I think there's a little bit of delay. I wanted to actually ask, how long were you guys together before the conversation? Because this is a really, this is a very common situation. People meeting later in life and, wanting to have family together, but not really kind of knowing, do we want to have family with each other or, so tell us a little bit more of that.
You could say it was always there for Kate because right in the beginning, literally a week after we met, she called me because I was traveling at the time, and she told me that don't freak out, but I have my eggs frozen next week. And then the next call was like, ugh, I don't actually have much eggs, so it's we won't be able to wait much longer. So I was kind of primed, but 1.5 years in is when we started talking, or she started talking about. For me, it was a bit early actually, but she was like, look. this is kind of important. We don't have that much time. So I said, why don't we just like not avoid it anymore? And then like, boom, we got pregnant right away. Yeah.
But then we had the first miscarriage. So
Yeah.
it was, that was just early on, like 6.5 weeks, 7 weeks in. And so after that, it was like, okay, now I was really in the mindset of we've got to get moving. So poor Simon, I mean, this was all like very fast for him at the time. So then I went straight to an IVF doctor, but we found out in Hong Kong, you can't start IVF unless you're married. So then he had to get married.
So Simon had it all lined up for him.
So this is now 2 years in, we're getting married, we're starting our IVF, and it didn't have a great start. I'd had frozen by this stage 2 rounds of eggs, and it wasn't a bad number actually. I mean, it wasn't great, but it was sort of like
12 or something.
14, 12, something like that. It was more than I was expecting with the news I'd been given. But then when we'd, defrosted those, put together with Simon's sperm, it was kind of like, there was really nothing kind of left. So that was obviously devastating. And it was soon after that. I mean, we did try a few things with our IVF doctors, but pretty soon after that we came to you guys. And the reason for that was because we knew someone personally who had been through your program, and I had seen them through that journey. They'd been the ones at the parties, not drinking alcohol, all that kind of thing. And they had success. And initially I didn't really think that was going to work. I wasn't sure that Simon would be prepared to commit. But actually, no, I know. When I initially
That was a very short period.
It was a very short period, because then when I put it to you and we joined that first call, we just had, I mean, you just were like 100% in. And that was just that was the kind of the start of this, I guess, the beginning of the change of everything. I can hear Kai coming in, so this is going to be we can jump to that bit of the story and then roll things back. But essentially, we eventually get to a point later in our lives, which we'll come to, where we decided it wasn't going to happen for us. And we adopted our son, Kai. Come on in, Kai. Hello. Hi. You're going to come and say hello, everybody. Hi. Can you say hello?
Oh, nice to meet you.
Yeah. So Kai is 2.5, and he's been with us for about 1.5 years now. Yeah. So and you're great, aren't you? And you're a big brother now to baby Max, aren't you? Who's this?
Who is it?
Oh, really? Baby Max, I think.
Tiger.
Oh, it's a tiger on Daddy's t-shirt. Yeah. Alrighty.
You're gonna go to
Kai is going to go off to kindy, so you can see.
Well, you have fun today. I hope you learn lots and do lots of drawing.
Yeah, have fun. Mwah.
Enjoy. Bye. Thank you for coming and saying hi.
Yeah, okay. Come on, let's go.
Bye,
Thank
buddy.
you, honey. Bye. Bye. Oh, that's a sweet bye.
Oh, what a sweetie.
There you go.
Oh, it's so beautiful, isn't it? When you kind of like see 2 little kids interacting. I really love that. And especially when they're little
the
and
best is when they're having, when you're recording something like this and they're having a good day, that's the best.
hey, I think that we just won. This is called winning in life.
Absolutely. So anyway, so we'll get to that.
We get to how Kai arrived, but I think that we were at the point where you had started and you were very focused and you were doing the things.
We were doing the things and we were discovering, we'd started discovering some of the things that weren't maybe, were holding us back. And we knew about my low egg count. At that point in time, everything was great about Simon's sperm. So he was like, Mr. Doing great on that front, but we didn't know a huge amount else. I forget now where some of the bits were filled in terms of, I know he's going to need to go to sleep. But essentially, yeah, there was a whole load of more information to find out. And I think when we came to you, there was that long questionnaire to fill in.
Yes,
And,
there is. The long questionnaire still exists. I think we try and pare it down as much as we can, you know. But as information becomes more readily available these days, it's difficult.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's that deeper dive that kind of ended up changing everything for us. So, yeah, we can go into the things that that I had discovered, and some of it, I guess, was through the genetic test that we did with you. So I had other things that were going on. There was the antiphospholipid syndrome. I had at that point in time, I think my TH1 was higher than my TH2, so that imbalance. There was another thing that I forget, which also contributed to potential blood clotting aspects. And my natural killer cells were slightly raised at that point as well.
Yeah. And this was all you found. Big discovery. You found all of this out after doing your first IVF cycle, right? So this was
exactly.
Yeah.
So we had done,
and that was through the program. Is that correct? So basically,
3 or 4 rounds of extractions.
Right. There's a little bit of a delay on the internet, so I'm sorry if I'm like interrupting you. But we just go back to, so basically what you said, just to make sure that I'm reiterating correctly.
Max is leaving. Bye-bye.
Hi, Max. Lovely to see you. He's tired. He needs to have a little bit of a nap now. Yeah, it's that time of morning.
Yeah, he's been up for like 90 minutes or so, and he gets a bit tired in the morning. So so we'd done several rounds. I'd done several rounds of extraction. So 2 before, which were just egg freezing, which, I mean, I've watched some of your podcasts before, and yeah, egg freezing, not as good as embryo freezing, clearly. So that was, and at the time we didn't know, when we were kind of putting it together with Simon's sperm, that actually we hadn't done the work yet. If I could look back and, you know, with hindsight, if we could have waited and cleaned up Simon's situation, which we'll come to, then maybe we'd had a slightly better outcome on that. But anyway, so we didn't, we were basically had very few embryos throughout this entire process, actually, to play with. But we'd done 2 transfers, I believe, before we came to you. So there was a chemical pregnancy, and 1 didn't take at all. So by the time we're coming to you, we've had 1 natural pregnancy ending in an early miscarriage. We'd had, you know, egg extractions with very few embryos being formed, and then we'd had a chemical pregnancy, and I think 1 failed transfer at that stage, roughly.
Yeah.
And so you could say we came to you, or I can certainly speak of myself, in a somewhat desperate state, because I really felt that at this stage, you know, things weren't happening. I don't know if.
Well, Kate's executive doer, so, you know, it was like, you know, you tried the natural thing, didn't work. We tried natural a bit more. I was like, okay, we need to gear up for level 2. Then we tried level 2. Level 2 didn't work by itself. So she's like, okay, you know, the bazooka approach, as I would call it. And but it also makes sense, you know. That's why, yes, I wasn't really excited about, you know, all the implications of the program as such, you know, no drinking, no coffee, all that stuff. But it made sense, you know. Now you make the effort, and then later you can't look back and think, oh, you know, maybe I should have, you know. That's I think for me that was really decisive to say, look, we're trying now, might as well try it in the best possible way. And you explained to us very well how the best possible way is, and then the outcome of all the tests was really a shocker, or not a shocker, like a eye opener. Like, there's a lot of things that even the IVF doctors in Hong Kong that are probably, you know, on par with the best IVF doctors in the world, they didn't even, they looked at my sperm once and said, perfect, we don't have to talk. I remember he said, so we don't have to talk about you, you're fine, you know. And that was totally not the case with you guys. You were like, well, there's this, and this could be better, and this could be better, and have you actually tested for these things?
Do you want to tell them what the main thing was that we discovered on your side? I haven't mentioned it yet.
The lead.
Yeah, the lead.
So the lead we only discovered because we didn't, I don't know if I did a blood test before for lead, but you guys insisted on that hair test, and I couldn't believe it. And then second hair test, and yeah, so I've got these weird high lead levels. Afterwards, my family tested as well to find out if it's something from where we lived in but nobody has it, just me. So
Isn't that
Yeah.
interesting? I always, for me, it's always so wonderful to hear the retrospect of all of that, because as much as, of course, we know the journey, who wishes for a journey that is complex and difficult and, I don't know, disheartening, if that even touches the side of the word that we need to use. But, at the end of the day, the point you've just made, Simon, I think is so critical for people to understand, is the fact that if you have half a semen analysis, which is the standard therapy, it's the conventional way of just getting things analyzed, and you're told everything is normal, and as a couple, you're still not holding your baby, you have to question that prognosis. You have to question, is this really true? Because even if there are egg quality issues and AMH, whatever, right? I think it's so important to realize that, okay, right, there's more that we need to understand. And you guys mentioned it, it's the deep dive that makes the difference of being able to uncover what is actually getting in the way. Because unless we do, you can't do something about unexplained, right?
Yeah.
And I mean the lead, so I don't know if you got to that part. At some point after various rounds of IVF, trying pretty much everything, at some point we said, maybe enough is enough. Not maybe, we said enough is enough. And so that's when we were also nearing the 3 years of marriage that we needed to be able to adopt in Hong Kong. And then we had an even longer questionnaire. Makes your questionnaire seem short, I tell you. So
I'm
we
glad.
adopted, but so a few things stayed with us. Obviously, I went back to enjoying my life with alcohol and coffee and sugar, but we didn't give up on other things, such as, I don't know if Kate mentioned, but
We haven't got at all
plastics
to that, no.
and
Yeah.
she'll tell
Basically,
you.
the entire lifestyle.
But the one thing I didn't give up on was the lead. So I kept trying to get rid of this ridiculous lead, and it was not easy. Didn't really work. So in the end, my local naturopath suggested the bazooka technique, which was a combination of intravenous stuff and DMSA, and that brought the levels down to the lowest level. It's still not low. You would still not be happy with that, but it was like less than half of what it had been. And shortly thereafter, this accidental, surprising pregnancy happened. So it might be that when we finally got the lead down, maybe that was the decisive factor. There's some other things that could also be an
And there's
explanation.
also time, right? And this is the thing that sometimes people get very, and I totally get it, Kate, that when you're going through it and in your mind you feel like, I'm running out of time, and isn't there going to be enough time? And you can almost convince yourself that you're running out of time just because of those questions. It's interesting, isn't it, to see how a combination of continuing the strategy, continuing to do things that you were doing that were supportive to your health, and time, how amazing
Yeah.
that actually is to make the change, right? So, but I think that go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, that's the biggest thing. So, ultimately, I think there are probably people who stayed with your program longer than we did. And so then the pregnancy happened in the program. What we did was, and this is partly me, and it was partly one of the things that, your program was trying to help me counterbalance. Stop thinking, the practitioner we were working with, stop thinking that time is running out. Stop thinking about the clock. They've tried so hard to get me out of that mindset. And unfortunately, particularly with my job and the way I'm wired, it wasn't happening. I'm a solutions driven person. And so I, at some stage,
it was not only you. I mean, I was also like, the IVF thing for me was a bit alien. And, it was not just go and do it. Kate had to do all these injections before and after and pre-cycles. I mean, a cycle was worth 2 months of a lot of effort on her behalf, not me anymore, but I just watching that, it was so far away from natural conception. So when we've had in total, how many failures do we ever count? 7? or whatever.
I think it's 5.
Five.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
I mean,
that's
with your
when I
situation, this is the other side of the
dropped
equation as well. No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. The internet
Yeah.
again.
that. I think that's when I brought up the idea of adoption again, because I think I had mentioned it at an early day. I don't remember exactly, but that stage we were both like, this would then be a process that we should start right now, because also you can get too
Takes
old
time.
for that. For
Yeah, yeah,
adoption, there's also a time, and you also have to wait. Our case, normally you
So
have to wait.
so many people have so much respect for people who just go again and again and again with IVF. And I think, from speaking to different doctors, often those people do end up with the baby at the end. And our practitioner said to us, if you keep going, I think you're going to get your baby. But it's a very personal decision that, especially because everything that I was trying to
yeah,
counterbalance was taking a lot on my body. And, I had quite a high stressful job anyway. And it just, so I think everyone's got that
100%.
different time limit in them, and it stretches from, it's such a wide range. But for us, we reached it
Yeah,
relatively quickly. And at the end of the day, and absolutely, we discussed adoption before, and I just woke up one day. His mother had said to me, like probably 6 months before, Kate, when is enough going to be enough? And I was like, what are you talking about? That's not going to be enough. I'm going to keep going. And then suddenly, just I, woke up one day and just felt, no, actually, it is enough now. And I just felt, adoption. It was just sort of like just came over me, a complete wave of conviction that that's what I wanted to do. And when I spoke to Simon, he was like immediately there. That's what he wanted to do. And we were just incredibly fortunate that then for us, that only took a 6 months process, which is just, beyond our wildest imagination. It was like this gift to us after,
yeah,
quite a stressful and time where we put in so much hard work. I mean, really, I think if you asked any of our friends around us, they knew how hard we'd worked in terms of following your program to the letter.
yeah,
And so we were blessed with Kai. I mean, we're still, on a daily basis almost talk about how lucky we are. I mean, really, and now we wouldn't have it any other way, because we wouldn't have Kai if we had gone through
yeah,
this. So this is
yeah,
absolutely the path that it was meant to be. And then, yes, of course, the spoiler alert at the beginning was that, sticking with the vast majority of the lifestyle changes. I mean, Simon's not a heavy drinker anyway, but having some alcohol, yes, but, in a very relaxed way. His coffee every day, but, the changes to our house, like no, the chemicals out of our house, all this stuff that was just so beneficial for our own health and now our children's health, all of that remained.
yeah.
And I'd already seen my natural killer cells come down and level out while on the program with you. I just think basically my inflammation was down following
Yeah,
the program.
100%, 100%. And this is the thing. In a situation like yours, yes, lifestyle, as I always say, lifestyle is a wonderful foundation upon which to overlay effective treatment. But what happens is that in order to be able to get the result that you want, lifestyle on its own is never going to be enough. Although, of course, it's beneficial. And this is the other thing, especially in your case with the clotting factors and the APS and like the natural killer cells, like understanding, even just finding out that those things were present, enable treatment to occur in a completely different way. Right. And sometimes it requires more and more, and it's required as like, okay, well, how do we dose this medication? How do we do this? How do we do that? And those things can take time, but it's amazing to see how when you remove the obstacles, how the body kind of self-regulates and balances out and is able to do what it was always meant to do. It's such a beautiful way of looking at your situation.
What strikes me still, I mean, since we've recommended you a lot, and I can't even think of anyone who's actually joined your program, which is really bizarre. People are very happy to spend
It's
where we
hard
live.
work.
It's like one of the most expensive places. I don't know if that's all it is, because a lot of women stop drinking and so on. I don't know why there's such resistance to it, because when we did our first session with you, that the introduction where you haven't decided yet, it was pretty decided for both of us right away. But these days, I used to always be like, not like the person would necessarily recommend people to have children, because I was like, let's see if it happens. But now the two things I recommend is don't wait too long until especially the woman is too old. And secondly, when you do it correctly, because otherwise it can take forever or leave you in a sad state. So I find it quite surprising that people are willing to spend, in our case, it's super expensive to do IVF in Hong Kong, and people do round after round. Then they start traveling to Europe, which is what a lot of people do then after they've done a few fails. That still is expensive and terribly complicated, because you have to fly multiple times and the partners fly at different times, etc., etc. Like all that effort, yes, but not do the natural way and
do the work. Like, look, I think that one of the, yeah, absolutely. But I think one of the big things is importance of proper diagnostics. You see, that's one of the things that I find that happens all the time. Oh, there you go. Somehow we got a little bit of an emoji going on there. A reaction on Zoom. But people do undervalue. I don't know why that's happening, but hey, people undervalue this whole idea of, making sure that the foundations are where they need to be. That's the critical piece that often, and reasons why IVF often doesn't work, even when, it should, even when everything is seemingly normal. It's a really interesting thing, but I agree with you. I think that a lot of people, there is also another factor, and I don't know if you guys will agree with me on this one or not. Maybe Kate, you might see my logic around this, which is sometimes people think that doing this work of understanding what's happening and what's getting in the way and understanding the foundation is going to delay them actually getting into real treatment, which is actually couldn't be further from the truth. Because if you don't know what tests to do and your doctors aren't telling you, and really all that you're being recommended is just everything is normal, just keep trying, what do you keep doing? Do you just keep going around in circles, doing failed cycles, then having to go and find different clinics to do the same thing in? Or do you actually go back to the drawing board and go, okay, what is it that I can actually make a difference to? And what are the pieces that I need to take into account? So what is it that you guys wish, like from your perspective, having gone through so much? First of all, so are we actually complete now in terms of a family? Is this
Very
the
complete. Very complete.
we're done? This is it.
We're delighted and complete. Absolutely.
That's so nice. I love that. I love when there is that sense of like, yes, this is it. We've done what we needed to do. What is it that you wish that most people knew or understood about the fertility journey? Not just medically, not just, like the things that people need to do, but what is it that you feel like, wow, if people knew this, it would make everything so much easier?
Well, I think
It would be spiritually anything.
Yeah, I think the time aspect is a big point for me. So just because it's not happening now doesn't mean it's going to happen. And somehow, if you can find your way to removing that timeline for yourself, I mean, I was told it and I couldn't, I had all the support through your program to try and get there mentally and emotionally, and I didn't find that path. So I'm not saying it's easy, but looking back, that was kind of the biggest thing. And it had, a critical aspect it had on our journey was that, we were recommended by our practitioner to not go into IVF and to wait and do like a whole year of removal of Simon's lead and to wait. And I just couldn't do it. So we plowed on and surprise, surprise, didn't work. And then these, several years on now, after Simon plugging away at this, it worked naturally without any IVF
It's
intervention.
not the only pathway.
No. Sure. Of course, I can't say like this is not a scientific experiment here, but ultimately,
it's an N of one at the very least. It's a scientific experiment of you compared to you. So,
that's my biggest thing is yeah, is be prepared to take the time, because actually, you know, you think you're in a rush, but it's that rush can be totally counterproductive. So I think that would be my biggest takeaway. And then the foundations, as you said, so do the work to sort of do that deeper dive. What about you?
Yeah, for me it's for me it's also time, but in a sense that, you know, if you say you want to have children, don't postpone. Like, oh, you know, we'll just see if it works. Because I also feel like relationships can reach a point where it's gone on too long and that has passed, and then suddenly you're sort of on a sort of phase out trajectory, which wouldn't have happened if you had children, or at least this mission. So one thing that I take away is, like, you know, if you've made that decision you want it, then you should try everything. And if you are going to try everything, I mean, pretty much everybody knows that women shouldn't drink alcohol. That's kind of like common knowledge, right? Even in conception stage. But all these other things, you know, try everything properly would be my recommendation. I mean, it was the thinnest I've ever been in your process. We were just talking about it yesterday. It was harder also because it was COVID. My business was not doing, you know, it was COVID related shutdown. You know, it was a lot of things, and then, you know, less socializing, and then we had to, like, you know, really take out the fun bits in life. But, you know, still, it's doable. It's not that difficult, you know, so people shouldn't delay it. And then when they do it, they should do it properly. And I think the natural approach is actually very good. But the final
You
thing
know,
I always want to say to people is, don't forget about adoption. We know several other couples. People keep telling us this story, you know, once you've adopted, the pressure, you know, she couldn't talk herself taking the pressure away from herself, because that time pressure is just there. There's a chance you might be a motherless woman for the rest of your, or a motherless couple, for a parentless couple for eternity, right? If you adopt, that doesn't mean that that's the end. We've now got kind of the best of both worlds, and we're giving somebody a life that would have had a harder life otherwise. It's a very amazing experience to do that. And adoption should be on everybody's mind, if it's possible in your country to do that, because that doesn't mean you don't conceive naturally. We feel lots of people telling us the story that that is very common. I've heard this
mm,
story of that person. I've heard the
mm,
story of that person.
mm,
So just having the pressure off
yeah,
also
yeah,
helps. Um,
yeah.
Not that
yeah.
I think people should adopt with a view to them
No.
getting pregnant,
Yeah.
just to be clear.
But
But
at
it's
least
funny,
you're
and
not
it's
childless.
interesting you say that, because we do have quite a few. I've had patients over the years who, I remember this one couple, they literally adopted two children and came on the program when the children were like 9 months and 14 months, and to have their own. And they did it. They actually did it. And I personally was like, wow, that's a lot of sleeplessness that one needs to, you know, kind of manage through. But it's about values and preferences as well, you know, like exactly as you said, some people, like, it's wonderful that you're so open, willing, and it was possible and easy for you guys where you were to do that. Like you mentioned, 6 months from beginning to adoption is unheard of. Like, that does not happen for most people in most countries around the world. And so what the typical experience of adoption for most people is, yes, there is an age limit cutoff. Yes, there is a year's delay of kind of waiting for your baby if it comes. And, you know, and so you guys had a wonderful experience in terms of that. It's like you said, you know, Kate, it's like we were so blessed. And you were absolutely so blessed. And that is just so, so wonderful. And it's that balance between, it's something that you were, in terms of values and preferences, totally open to doing. And I always say to people, the more open to different ways of having a baby you are, the more you are guaranteed to actually have a baby. Because
Mm.
it's not like it used to be, you know, when I first started doing this work in 2001, back then, you can put in enough money, time, energy, all of the things, and still not be guaranteed to have a baby. With the
Mm.
way technology is today, right? It literally is a situation that if you truly want a baby, there are so many different ways of going about it that if you are willing to put in enough time, energy, effort, and money, you will end up with your baby. It's just you've got to be flexible on the how,
Yeah.
right? And that wasn't so, you know, not so long ago. But it's wonderful to see that for you guys, it worked out in such a perfect way. The one thing that you also said that made me smile internally, even though it's kind of like a cringe kind of smile, is the fact of like, you know, how many times I've heard this same story of like the clinician will go, all right, these are the problems. This is what you need to do about it.
Yeah.
These are the steps. And then people are like, no, not gonna do it. You know? And then this happens, which, hey, I think it's wonderful that we have that ability to look back and go, yes, things could have been different, but you've said it so perfectly. It's like, it shouldn't have been different because it was exactly what should have happened.
Yeah.
You know, like how else would Kai have come into your life and how else would you have been so blessed? And I think that that's just such a beautiful, beautiful thing. But yeah, for me, I'm like, okay, how do we make sure that we get even more compelling at making sure people actually do the things?
Absolutely. If that's a gift that you can give someone to really help them through that, if it's like being tougher on people, because I let my impatience and kind of just like drivenness override, you know, very sensible advice. And I suppose with lead, it was just because it's such an unknown. Heavy metals are so, you know the impact of it, but so many doctors will don't
No
either believe in
concept.
it or understand it or whatever. So it was a really hard one. If it had been sort of hard and fast, this is an issue, you've got to do it. But I suppose with lead, it was one of those things, we don't know where it's come from. Some, our insurance company and the doctor don't even believe it's a thing. So it was a really
Yeah.
hard one to overcome, but
Yeah.
absolutely.
No, for sure. And this
It
is
was,
the problem that so many couples around the world run into. It's that usually it's not for lack of evidence, it's for lack of the fact that the cost effectiveness and the personalization of medical treatment doesn't occur. So for example, why would an insurance, company want to invest the time, effort, money, because we know this ain't cheap, right? Figuring out how it is that somebody is having difficulty conceiving and having a baby, when in the general population, most people have sex, get pregnant, have a baby done. We're no longer having this conversation. Why do we need to invest money in this place when we are already bleeding out money on so many other health conditions that actually are life threatening? And this is the problem that I think, is so sad for most couples who experience fertility challenges and miscarriages and even failed IVF treatment. It's that looking at the healthcare system specifically, it is a matter of like literally in terms of cost effectiveness science, the motto is if you're going to treat anyway, why test? So that's the first thing. Like there's no point in testing because you're going to treat it. And if we can't treat it with IVF, then there's no point in testing. That's the first thing. The second thing is if a health condition, right? And this is the way in which this area of science works. And I've taken a couple of cost effectiveness classes at Harvard, so I know very clearly how this works, which is basically if a health condition is going to cost X amount of dollars to test and to treat, okay, and not doing that at the end of that course of time is going to prevent, is going to cost the same amount of money. If not doing that and treating the disease is going to cost the same amount of money that it would have cost to prevent that disease, we're not preventing. We're not actually doing anything about that because it's the same cost to treat the disease, obviously not taking into consideration, everything else that it means to, have a condition that leaves you on a bed. Like my grandmother, she had diabetes that got complicated and several strokes, became a vegetable on her bed, basically at the age of 60 something. And so I look at that and I go, wow, wouldn't it have been interesting if there was more health promotion, more understanding for people who develop these conditions on how to prevent such events? Because the reason that she ended up having complications was because she didn't have the education or the environmental policy and support not to be drinking Coca-Cola as, as water, and, not to be doing certain things because she just didn't know. And so the prevention aspect was never there. Develop the disease. Now, the burden of that to the emotion of the family, the person, the cost of having to then take care of a person like that, it's not the same. But from a cost perspective, in terms of the healthcare system, it is the same. Therefore, there's no point in doing anything about it. And with infertility and the challenges that a lot of our patients experience, it's even worse because it's an underfunded area. It's underfunded in terms of research. It's privatized in many ways. So clinics actually make a lot of money. IVF is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And there's nothing wrong with that. It delivers babies. And, you know, for some people, it's the way in which they need to be able to get that outcome. But it's not the same in terms of what that means for your health in the long term. I mean, look at for you now, Simon, the difference between knowing that, you know, you can have a better, healthier quality of life as you are working on improving different aspects of your health means that you're around for your children longer, you know, and you're getting to enjoy that
Well, it's about
experience a whole lot more.
babies
So I
and
think that
healthy
that's a,
parents. Yeah.
sorry?
It's not just about the success of the outcome of having a baby. I think what I value so much about the program is actually having, you know, helping to have the healthiest baby. So doing the best by your embryos and the baby that that, you know, you give birth to. And also, yeah, I guess for us, especially if you are having a baby a little bit later on. So I got pregnant when I was 42. I was just literally a few months later, I turned 43. I gave birth when I was 43. I'm about to turn 44 and my baby's 3 months old. You know, I do feel like there's a responsibility to live healthily. You know, I mean, of course you can get hit by a bus tomorrow, but with things within your control, you know, I do think that it's like we want to put in the effort, and we do, in terms of like not just, you know, health, but also strength and being fit and, you know, being able to, you know, do all the sports to, you know, to be active. And yeah, so that's
Because there will be a lot of
that's
running around for you.
very strong about, yeah, about the program.
So Simon, you better get ready. You know, there will be a lot of like kicking balls around the place and, you know, going to rugby and sports and, you know.
Yeah, I mean, Simon is in like great shape and probably looks, you know, in terms of like your overall like you know, I guess slimness, compared to when I met you. You're just like, you put on some trousers the other day and they just you know, they fall.
But I was slimmer in the middle of the program.
Of course.
10 months later.
Don't worry, you can get back there.
Anyway, but it's just overall, it's had a look. I mean, at the end of the day, we thought when we finished the program, wasn't, you never really finish if you carry on with it. But we thought that we were one of your, you know, a stat of like it not working out. But ultimately, it stayed with us, and you know, here we
also
are.
never regretted it, though.
We
know,
never
because
regretted it.
For me, that's what I said at the beginning. For me, and that's what I tell people from my experience, is like I felt that time, yeah, it was a bit sour because, you know, we did all that stuff and it didn't work. But at least we didn't look back and said, should we have done that? And maybe then it would have worked. That would be terrible if you know, sit in your house without children when you're 50 and you look back and you're like, that time when we're doing all that, maybe we shouldn't have. That would be terrible, right? So that is for me the motivator that everybody should have is, if it doesn't work, you're going to kick yourself that you didn't do it properly. That's what I would say.
Yeah. And I mean,
the
look, you know,
additional benefit. It didn't work, but we got so much out of it still. Like we found out about Simon's lead. We like found out I have a better understanding of my health, and you know, we learned so much about our bodies, like, you know, leaky gut stuff, microbiome, all these things. Like we are so much better educated. So we got like, even of course now we have Max 2, so that is, you know, bonus, best possible outcome.
That's the part that didn't work, FYI, everybody.
Outcome. But even before that, even before his arrival, we did get so much out of that program, hence no regrets whatsoever. The knowledge that we got from it and the changes we made to our lifestyle, and Kai benefited from it. You know, he wasn't in a household with bleach and chemicals, and like the food that he got was organic, and you know, it changed the way we have you know, the environment we've created for Kai and now for Max, and you know what we put in ourselves. So yeah, so we still got huge amounts out of it even before Kai and Max's arrival.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you hit it on the head, you know, Simon. It's like, no matter what, I think that being able to tell the story to yourself that you've done everything you needed to do, and that if it hasn't happened for whatever reason in the time frame that you expected, that it wasn't because of you not putting in the effort, right? And I think that that's such a powerful, there's so much power in that. So much, like, just that knowledge, that kind of safety in the knowledge that, hey, you know, like, I gave my best. I've done everything that I needed to do.
Mm.
I wanna know how, now having come through to the other side, you know, like, obviously you guys are in a very different place now. What is it like, how does parenthood feel? What does it like mean to you now compared to before you actually had your first, you know, kind of Kai come into your life? Like, has it been, is it different to what you imagined? Is it the same? Like, how has that concept of parenthood changed now that you are where you are?
We spoke a lot about like what parenting meant to, like what it meant to be a parent when we were going through the process. Like, why were we doing this? Why were we so driven for it? And I had like a biological chemical thing, but Simon was a very rational, like thinking through it. And I think the main thing that we landed on was that we wanted that purpose in life. We wanted to have a purpose beyond our own personal enjoyment in life. And for me, I would say, you know, that like, and of course, Kai was our first child. So that's when we like came to that realization, or personally, I came to that realization is, yeah, this is the purpose I was looking for, you know, to nurture and care about another child. It's just, it really, another person, sorry, is just, that is what I was looking for. And now we're in the trenches with two. I think we'll re-come to that realization again. But yeah, what do you think? Is that?
Well, I feel like it's completely different. It's disconnected from everything that we had to do with you. Is about being able to get into the starting position, right? And it's almost like we do all this effort to you know, go through university, etc., and then you get a job. It almost is like, yeah, irrelevant what you learn, because the job is a
Yeah.
fresh start. Has, you know, as it is almost, yeah, we did all this work, and now we're starting to learn all new about parenthood, which is kind of, except for the healthy part, disconnected from all the effort was there before. So and in my case, I was always like, let's see, if it happens, then I'll deal with it. Kate already had like pretty much her motherhood mapped out, and you know what's she gonna how she's gonna dress her daughter, which didn't happen because we got two boys, for whatever her
I
prom.
had the same, Kate. Don't worry, I'm with you on that one.
I feel very blessed about that. Two boys is definitely my preference. But you know, I didn't have the plan, so you know, now I learn about this. So for me, yeah,
You're just happy in the
I'm just
moment.
happy.
Simon's good at being in the moment, and yeah, but that's, I guess that's it. I mean, I think it's, you know, I was looking for that purpose, and that's what it is. And you know, of course, it's hard, and I would say that well, it's harder when you've got two under two, or two within
Yeah.
2.5. But the you know, you've got, thank goodness we did have that time together. Like, we had some amazing times as a partners, the two of us together before that, and that was so valuable and so important as well. And now we're building it in a different way as a family. It's, you know, totally, the things that you're doing look totally different, and I think hopefully help build that foundation to get, you know, to enjoy this different way of
Mm.
approaching life, which you have to when you have children, and then to come out the other end and just build on that. You know, it just keeps changing, and actually I think keeps getting better and better. So yeah, we're very much in the thick of things, and Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, I did I did want a girl, it's true. But now I have two boys. I wouldn't want it any other way. I think that's the thing, is you love what you have at the end of it all, and
Yeah, yeah.
that is
And
the
I have to
most.
say, I think having two of the same is easier than having a boy and a girl. Like, some people, that's their thing. They want to have a boy and a girl, and that's wonderful. Whereas I had a boy, I was like, I actually didn't care what I had to begin with. I said, look, I don't really care. If it's a boy, it's a boy. If it's a girl, it's a girl. But whatever I'm gonna have, I just want two of the same. Like, I just think there's different rules for, boys and girls. And I remember, as I was growing up, my cousins who were boys could go out and do things that I couldn't do because I was a girl. And I'm like, oh no, that those conversations, too many different conversations to be having with children. I was like, two of the
And
same
to
would
be
be
great
great.
mates. And I think, yeah, as two boys, hopefully they're just gonna, Simon is one of two boys, and his brother's a lovely guy, and they've been good friends to each other over the years, and
Yeah.
that's what I hope so much for to Kai and Max, that they just
You also
are
have two
good.
brothers, and you also
I've
have
got
good friends.
yes, yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but it's a
Whatever
different
it is,
thing.
we're just delighted that Kai has a sibling, and
Yeah.
if we were going to go down the adoption process again, actually, when we got this amazing news, that this surprise pregnancy, and but that could have taken, as you said, like, we were very lucky the first time around that it only took 6 months, but that could have taken years, and might not have happened at all, because we might have just decided, okay, we've got to draw a line here.
Would have been fine with Kai alone as well.
And it, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
really
Yeah.
wanted,
I know.
actually it was all about the having another child. Was not about the need at that point for us to have another child because we had Kai. It was everything about providing a sibling for him, actually, at that point. So the focus had totally changed. Yeah, and then of course, yeah, the story is where.
Isn't that interesting? It's fascinating how life changes. Now, I do have a question for you, Kate, and actually for both of you, but I think a real question for you, because I feel like you had a lot of learnings through this journey, like personal learnings about yourself, about how you handled, how you moved into the situation and out of the situation, however, that those learnings were. And there were many wonderful learnings, like as I hear you talk, it's like, you got a lot out of that understanding for yourself. What is it that you learned in that journey of, preparing to conceive, finally having Kai, finally having a baby, then obviously having Max, that is a learning you would take away beyond here? It's kind of like a question that ties into how parenthood shifted in your mind before you had babies, right? But also, what is it that you've learned through that path and that journey that you would actually like to remind yourself about when they are, I don't know, 15, 16, 17, 18, whenever in the future?
Well, I mean, it's definitely that side of my brain, that kind of like, slightly controlling, this is the way it's got to be. It's being open to these different paths, and being like that more in the moment, sitting back a bit and watching what happens. And just being like so much more aware that there's not just one correct way. There are lots of, different paths that can open up. And I think that was important in the pregnancy journey, conception journey, but actually it's so much more important in the parenting journey. So this is where it's, we really need that, to have that open-mindedness. So I'm not saying that, and Simon's probably sitting there going, I think you've still got a bit to learn on that front. But it's the self-awareness of it, and I definitely, yeah, you don't get it right every day, and no one does perfect parenting, but I think that has been a huge learning for me, and is something that I, reflect on constantly.
That's awesome. That's so amazing. I love, what I love, and the reason that I started doing this work was actually because of that self-actualization aspect of the human going through this journey, and really wanting to dive deep into who am I, meaning and meaning making, and all of that. So for me, to hear you answer that question is just so beautiful, because this is so much why I continue to be so engaged in the work that I do after so many years, because I really do know how transformative this path is. You know, no matter how how it's navigated or what happens in the process, but just the process of it on its own is just such a remarkable thing. Simon, for you, what was one thing that you learned about yourself that you would have either learned much later in life were it not for this journey, or that you wouldn't have learned
I
and
was
you
just
did
thinking
because of this
was
journey?
what Kate was answering, like what for me, like if I boil it down to one thing, it's actually a reminder of something that I did before, because and what it is basically, if you know that you should do something, then do it. Like, as in, when you know there is something that you should be doing to achieve something, then do it. Don't put yourself in that situation where you look back and be like, I really should have. And I did do that for myself. I gave up my very, like, I was on a career track that I'd laid out and worked on hard. And at 35, I gave it up because I, for years, was starting to feel that I was not going to be happy doing that. And I strongly believe I only met Kate because I had done that. I don't think in my old life I would have met her and impressed her. And and then, but then when we came to the fertility journey, which was arguably more her dream, but I was like, yeah, okay, you know, you don't get together one of these and then don't let them have children. I mean, that was kind of, I always thought that. I always liked strong women, and I assumed that that was going to come, but it was not my driver. But then when I said, okay, let's do it, I was more reluctant to go the whole way. I was like, oh, IVF, I don't know, and this fertility, the natural fertility stuff. I was always a bit on the back foot at first, but thank God I didn't, because otherwise we would look back now and, you know, maybe regret that we didn't. And so that's what I'm saying for everything, for everyone, is don't just ask yourself, are you going to regret it in 5 years that you did or did not do something? And that, I think, was a good reminder in this process as well.
So I have to say, Simon lives that. I mean, yeah, I 100% credit to you, because I'm so lucky. And I met like a lot of people in the community of people trying to get pregnant who don't have husbands who are all in. Simon was all in for something that was super hard for him to commit to. Like, it wasn't, when it's easy, you know, it's that's one thing, but this was really hard for him, and he just was all in. And that, I mean, I'm extremely grateful. If he hadn't done it, we literally would not be here today. So I believe that anyway.
I'm just holding my arm, but it takes...
yeah, I mean, to be honest, and if you say you're going to do something, you know, follow through and stop it. Anyway, that's very serious. But look,
yeah, exactly. This is like the moment, Simon, and here you are doing, you know, thumbs up. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, and I suppose bring that through to parenthood as well, because you'll think about, like, is this something I should do for Kai or do for Max? And I do believe that you will do it. So far
we've done that, right?
Yeah, we've done it. Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for having this conversation. For me, it's really, truly beautiful to be able to kind of, you know, get in there in your thinking process and how things unfolded for you and how things are now. So thank you for sharing. But before we do go, I do want to hear, like, let's say that, you know, Kai and Max are watching this at some point in the future. What are some words that you have for them that you'd like to share?
I might cry. Yeah, so I mean, to Kai, ultimately you made us parents, and that was just the beginning of this whole wonderful journey of being parents to you. And we're so grateful, and we just feel, I mean, really, genuinely, we reflect on this constantly about how lucky we are to have you. You're just the most joyful, wonderful boy. Here we go. And I would say to Max, like, you know, you're a miracle to us. Like, we never expected you to come, and in the end you came just at the right time. So thank you for waiting until Kai was here. And yeah, we're very much complete with you now in our family too.
It's a very hypothetical thing for me, so I'll probably just say, guys, stop fighting, put on your shoes, let's go outside. That's what we'll be doing, because I got boys. I won't
You
give
know, I have tears in my eyes from Kate, and then like, you know, I'm like laughing. That
There
is
we go.
hilarious. That is so good. But yeah, stop fighting. That's what I'm going to say to you. And go do something great for other people that really, you know, uplifts another human being, because this world really needs it. And I'm sure that both of you will have the most amazing opportunities to do exactly that and make the contribution that the world needs from you being here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks
Gabriela.
so much for your support.
And really, this is testament to how you're changing lives. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being here. I can't even begin to share, you know, and I'll just stop our Facebook little conversation. But